Hello, Broken Arrow. This is The Vibe Broken Arrow, and I am Aaron McCulloch, Communications Director for the City of Broken Arrow, and this man is City Manager Michael Spurgeon. Mr. Spurgeon, thanks for joining us today.
Absolutely. I've been looking forward to talking about something very important about our transparency in this city, Aaron.
I agree. I love this annual report. Since you kind of teed it up for me there, we're talking about Thrive. It's our annual report, financial annual report, if you will. Thank you, Vanna.
That's right.
And what this is a report that really hits on a couple of the organization's priorities: transparency and communication and fiscal stewardship, really making sure that we're taking care of the people's money. Yes. And long before I started working for the city, I was a resident of Broken Arrow, just like the folks who are watching. I always appreciated this whenever it would come to my house, be able to flip through it, take a look at some different things. Just before we dive into it and start talking about a few different pages, why put this together? Because it takes a lot of work.
Well, it does. I will just say this. When I first started in my career back in the late 80s, early 90s, I was taught by my mentor is one of the most important things we do is to keep our community informed about what's going on. And you do that. 4 decades ago, we do it a little bit different than we do. In fact, a lot different than we do today. But we still have the ultimate responsibility to let folks know what's going on at City Hall. So that's been one of my tenets since I started in this business almost 38 years ago. And back then we had newspapers, we had newsletters, we had inserts into utility bills. Well, newspapers are not as prevalent today as they were obviously just 10 to 15, 20 years ago. However, we still send out utility bills. That's very important. And we still have the opportunity to provide with people an actual document that they can actually keep near somewhere in their house to look at when they have time to find out what's going on. And so I've just believed that we need to transition as I've gone through my career over the decades, making sure that we provide every medium there is to make sure we communicate effectively with our citizens. And this Thrive document, which is in its 9th year, I couldn't be happier with the transparency. I know that the mayor and council members also think very highly of the fact that we are providing the residents with all the information they know about where their dollars come from, how those dollars are spent, what projects we're working on, and how we compare to other cities.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because accountability. This is a page here section, starts on page 7, where we talk about the revenues and we talk about the expenses. We have a balanced budget. That's really important.
We do. It's required by state law that municipalities actually have a balanced budget. And I'm pleased to say that we take a very conservative approach to every single year when we do the budget, because you've got to think about it. There's one-time expenses that we have for a project or initiative or even something in the operations. But ultimately, many of our expenses in the operations are perpetual. And so I've always believed that we need to look closely at any additional increases, whether it's personnel, whether it's ongoing other operating expenses, because there's a cost to that. And because we are so heavily dependent upon sales tax, which ebbs and flows as we see throughout the years, it's very important to make sure that what we start, we're able to justify, number one, and then secondly, be able to sustain. And so I think it's important that folks know where we get our dollars from. Like, for example, is in Broken Arrow, we do not get any of the property taxes folks pay to the city for operational expenses. Sometimes people will say, well, I pay my property taxes to the city. Well, we do get a small portion related to repayment of bond projects or initiatives approved by the voters. So we're heavily dependent upon actually sales tax, franchise fees that we actually collect, as well as other miscellaneous revenues, utility revenues. And so that's the first thing I always like to point out is that we don't have access to property taxes. And so we have to be good stewards of the public dollars, not just for today, but next year and then 5 years, even 10 years into the future.
Well, I'm glad you brought up sales tax because that's one of the pages in the accountability section over there on page 12. Yes. And I thought it was interesting to see that we do a sales tax rate comparison, with some cities around us, around the state, and it's interesting to see that in Tulsa County, of course, Broken Arrow spreads over to 2 counties, Tulsa and Wagner County, but in Tulsa County, our sales tax rate is 8.417%, which is less than just about everybody other than Edmond. And so I think it's almost a half cent less than some of the others. That speaks to the cost of living here in Broken Arrow, what makes it such a great city to live in.
Well, it does. I mean, you look at it like this. If you spend $100 and when you go to pay to check out, your bill is going to be about $108. Probably 109 approximately. Well, a lot of folks don't realize that $8 and some change that comes in doesn't all go to the city. However, some folks believe it does, when the reality is of the 8.4, as you mentioned, and a little bit of change, only 0.355 or less than basically $4 of that $8 would actually come to the city of Broken Arrow. The rest of it would go to the state as well as to the Tulsa or Widener County respectively. And so I think this Thrive actually helps provide education, especially for new residents that may be coming from somewhere else in the state or somewhere from another state that may not be aware of how heavily dependent we are on sales tax. And we like to show this as a comparison, is that, we are very fiscally conservative, and it starts with our current sales tax. Now, that doesn't mean there couldn't be other opportunities for looking at our sales taxes. Obviously, we always need to be look at what the cost of government is and other opportunities, which we may be considering as a part of the next bond package that we submit to the voters, where there could be opportunities for some type of temporary increase in sales tax that's going to benefit the citizens and businesses within our city. But I love this page because it gives you a snapshot. In some cases, you can see sales tax is much higher in other cities, which creates additional revenue for them. So sometimes when you look at comparisons about where Broken Arrow is versus where, say, Edmond, for example, which constantly is comparable in certain situations, is their household income is higher, and secondly, their sales tax is higher, and they have other revenues, which to me it's not apples with apples. Comparison.
I agree. You talked about how the city gets 3.55% out of that 8.417, again, using Tulsa County. And then breaking it down even further, we actually have a little diagram here over on page 11 where it shows that 3.55 and how we allocate that money and where it goes: general fund, BAMA, STCI, public safety sales tax, and then the street fund. It's really important that those monies go where they're supposed to go, so that way we can then in turn provide those services to the people.
It's absolutely imperative that we share this information, and hopefully folks will take the time to look through it and better educate themselves to exactly where the dollars come from, what they're being charged. I mean, obviously utility bills are always a difficult subject because we're trying to keep the cost for utilities at or just above what it costs to provide those services. And, for example, I saw a post, I've actually seen two posts on social media where the people have seen the new water tower that's out on New Orleans and Lynn Lane, and they've said, I hope that my utility bill is not paying for that new water tower. Well, in fact, it is. Because obviously we've got to maintain our system, and we have to actually grow our system to accommodate the businesses and citizens that are coming here. And part of your total budget for utilities specifically is basically capital improvements / debt service. And so the city has that project is well over $10 million, and that's got to be divided amongst 43 approximately thousand customers to make sure that we repay that debt, to make sure there is adequate water pressure and capacity, storage capacity specifically, in our system to be able to meet the expectations our citizens have when it comes to not only producing water, but delivery of water. And so the project out on County Line, the large sewer line replacement project, if you haven't seen it, folks, I would encourage you to drive out onto actually County Line Road, starting around New Orleans and either and go south. You can see that's approximately $20 million project, and those projects have to be completed periodically in order to make sure we maintain, number one, compliance with the law, and to meet the expectations of providing services to our citizens, which means the delivery of those materials to our treatment plants.
You brought up utilities. We have a utility rate comparison on page 17, and what it shows folks is that we're competitive. That we're competitive with a lot of the cities in our area. And I know it's difficult for you. It's difficult for the council whenever they have to review the manual fees every year. They have to review the utility rates. They have to evaluate whether or not we need to do an increase to cover the expenses that we incur. I know that there was a lot of talk this year, and the number of just how much stuff has increased as far as just dirt, rock, things that we need to have to be able to replace water lines, to repair water lines. That's where they've skyrocketed. Solid waste and recycling, as far as our land fees are concerned, they've skyrocketed something like 100% over the past 3 years. What this shows you is that what we're planning and what we're doing and what we're strategizing is very much in line with a lot of other municipalities and what they are doing, and the rates are comparable.
Well, you covered it. Let me just mention a couple other things about the utilities. Is that probably one of the most difficult times of the year for the governing body, Mayor Wimpy and the city council, when they're in their capacity as the utility authority members, is looking at the utility rates. One of the hardest times of the year for me is when I have to make recommendations. I mean, I'm a citizen and I have to pay those exact same expenses. The council and I are not exempt, nor any city employees or any leadership team members that actually live here. We all pay those same rates. And there's a number of elements that you take into consideration. The competency of our staff. There is incredible longevity amongst our members in the utility department, and the level of expertise, not only day to day, but throughout the entire state, when it comes to actually treating wastewater, to actually producing very clean potable water, to the replacement of the water and sewer lines, stormwater management. I said, we are very fortunate and blessed to have a very high actually retention rate of those employees. And so we're very fortunate to have the best, because I think the utility customers here in Broken Arrow and those that are outside the city, they deserve to have the very best people working for them. Well, there's a cost to that. There's a cost associated with folks that have been here 10, 15, 20 years in the level of expert that they bring. And I think the citizens, they want that. Well, you stop and think about what it costs for utilities. Well, we're not the only utility department. There's ONG. There's also PSO. And so I can understand the frustrations, and I empathize very much when we look at our utility rates, because our goal is to make sure the rates are only what we need to take in to provide those great services to our citizens.
I know orange is your favorite color.
Yeah.
This is my favorite section of Thrive, and it's the current and completed projects that we have. We talked a lot about the utility rate fees and how some of that money goes towards improvements and that sort of thing. You talked about property taxes and how that goes into capital improvements that the voters approved. Talk a little bit about this. I know you love this section because, again, it's orange.
I love orange because it represents progress. Now, it does require, as I've said for 10 years, it does require a certain level of inconvenience. When you widen a road from 2 lanes to 3 lanes or 2 lanes to 5 lanes, there's going to be a year to a year and a half of inconvenience, and sometimes it's painful. And I like to drive through those streets periodically just so I can experience it, even if I don't live in that part of town, so I can feel what the residents are feeling when they're being inconvenienced. But I do know when the voters approve bond packages and they include projects in there for road widenings or intersection upgrades, sidewalk expansions, I believe they should get what they voted for. And a part of that is actually doing these projects in a very timely manner based on when we sell the dollars. To build a road widen it actually from 2 to 5 lanes, it can be a 3 to 4 year project when you think about all of the different elements, which we've talked about. But number one, you have to get the funding. Number two, you have to design the actual road. You have to secure the right-of-way, and most people do not give their right-of-way anymore. You have to negotiate with them. Then the utilities have to be relocated outside of the right-of-way of the road, and then we actually build the road or widen the road itself. And so there is inconvenience, and I apologize for that inconvenience, but I do know that it's helping the east-west section right now for Houston, for example. We're getting ready to finish up 1 mile, the west mile from Garnett to Olive early next year, but we've already awarded the contract to actually start on the other mile to the east from Olive to Aspen that voters approved. And so I love the orange because it shows progress, and it also shows promises made, promises kept to the citizens. And that's why we've had tremendous success in our bond packages previously, because the voters see value in providing the funds to make sure that we take care of the things that are important to them to maintain a great quality of life.
The thing I like about this section is it lists out all of the different projects by different departments, from Parks and Recreation,
Yes.
Streets, the stormwater utilities, public safety. We label the project, we label the status. So like you just talked about, whether it's in design or right-of-way acquisition or utility relocation, construction, the cost, and then the funding source. That's something I've never seen before. And is that one of those things that you've learned in the past is really important, or is that just something that you feel is the right thing to do?
It's both, actually.
Yeah.
I was learned a long time ago is to put the information out there for folks to be able to know exactly what something costs. And actually, and then demonstrate that actually that's why we do the drive-in BA videos. Is we talk about, we do the projects we're getting ready to do. We talk about projects that are currently under construction, and then we do the rearview mirror section, which is, I like that as much as I do about what's happening, because it shows promises made, promises kept. And sometimes you have to remind our voters, because they're busy. They're basically living their lives, taking care of their families, going to work, going to soccer practice, going to church. And so it's good to say, hey, you gave us this money in 2014 or 2018. And I can tell you, one of the things I'm most excited about with the upcoming bond package is because each person that's going to be giving a presentation, and you're the one that's going to be putting together it, so I'm very blessed that you're leading that effort, is in that packet when the speakers go out, one of the documents that's going to be in there is a sheet of the approximately 90 projects that were approved in the 2018 bond package. And so we're going to be able to say, of those 90 projects, here are how many have we completed and what percentages are somewhere in the construction cycle. So once again, we're asking voters potentially to give us additional revenue to continue to maintain a great quality of life. At the same time, here's what you gave us before, and we're so proud to show you of the progress that we've made in just 8 years since the voters approved those in August of 2018. And so I'm going to make sure when I'm out speaking is to say, this is what you gave us before, here's our performance. And that should actually help folks have a good education of understanding about they can trust us that when we say we're going to do something, we do get it done. So I'm excited about this document. I mean, if folks actually take the time to go through it, hopefully they'll send out some questions or make a post or two on social media and ask questions for what they see, or that they like to get together with the mayor and council members or myself and go over something. We'd be glad to do that.
And you have over the years.
Yes.
The city has over the years. I brought these out. We've been doing this Thrive for about 9-10 years, I think it is. My math isn't very good. I think you're probably a little bit better mathematician than I am. But all of these are on the city website at brokenarrowok.gov/thrive. So you can flip through it. If you'd like a copy of it, you can come over to City Hall. And if you want your own copy at home, you can download it, print it off. It's about 22 pages, I think, is just 22 pages full of comprehensive information about the city and how your tax dollars and fees are being used.
It's wonderful, Aaron. I'll do my best, Vanna, one more time. I love the cover every year. We spend a lot of time deciding which cover. Obviously, on here is the fountain, interactive fountain at the Rose District Plaza. Right now we're talking about council has selected an option to present to the voters potentially on April 7th. They picked that this last Monday night at the November 17th council meeting. And there's been a lot of buzz about what that's going to be, and nothing better than to have the Rose District and the beautiful mural that we have on the museum in the background. And so thank you for all your hard work, and I look forward to engaging with our citizens, and actually we'll be passing these out.
You can find it on the city website.
The Vibe Broken Arrow is produced by the City of Broken Arrow. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to subscribe to hear more about Broken Arrow, the city where opportunity lives.